Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening. Welcome to our Sioux Falls City Council meeting. It's Tuesday, April 16, which means taxes are filed, potholes are filled. It's a good day. So we'll begin our meeting tonight by having clerk. Okay, we'll go ahead and read our roll.
Council members Erickson.
Here.
Kylie. Here. Neitzer.
Here.
Selberg. Here. Sale. Here. Starr. Here. Staley.
Here.
Brecky.
All right. It's my honor this evening to welcome Shankar Davidi. How'd I do? Okay, very good. He's a priest at the Hindu Temple of Siouxland, and he's going to give our invocation this evening. So, as you can see, we have a part of it on the screen. I'd ask that you arise for this and welcome Shankar, and stay standing afterwards for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. Namaste. I'm deeply honored and privileged to have this opportunity to provide invocation to the City Council meeting. So thank you, Mayor Ten Haken and council members. I'm going to recite a prayer from Rig Veda, which is one of the Hindu scriptures, and to my knowledge, this is one of the oldest scripture on this globe, and it was written at least 6,000 BC. And you could see even 6,000 BC, prayer was pretty universal. Just for your comfort, I tried to, of course, prayer is in Sanskrit, one of the ancient language, which was spoken in India. And what I have read, even English is derived from Sanskrit. But unfortunately, a lot of people cannot read, write, and understand Sanskrit. So that's real unfortunate. So for your convenience, I have tried to give you transliteration. So if you like to follow with me, you are welcome to do it, but you don't have to do it. Then again, I'm giving translation, and I'm not really expert. I would not claim this is the best translation, but this is the best translation I can provide. Om Bhur Bhuvah Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. And it's an English translation. O all-pervading Lord, you are the creator, preserver, and destroyer, pure and purifier, free from all pains, energizer, and basis of the life of this multiform universe. Please direct our knowledge and intellect in the right direction to follow the path of truth, good deeds, and enlightenment. Thank you very much.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Peace, Kurt. Peace, my friend.
Peace. Thank you.
This is the door.
Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is our consent agenda, and I ask if there's any changes or motions to be made.
Mr.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you. I'd like to pull items number 21 and 22.
Okay. Are there other changes or motions to be made?
Approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second, Kylie.
All right, move approval by Erickson and seconded by Kylie. Any further discussion? All right, take a vote, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We'll move on to our regular agenda, item 29. Look for any changes or motions to that.
Move to approve. Second, Selberg.
All right, move to approve by Kylie and seconded by Selberg. Any discussion, council? Okay, a vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Brecky.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. We're at the public input, general public input portion of tonight's agenda. As a reminder, input during this portion will last no more than 3 minutes per person, and in total, last no more than 30 minutes. During general public input, the public is welcome to speak on any topic that does not appear later on in the agenda. For regular agenda items following general public input, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input is limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item that's under consideration only. So at this time, I'd like to invite members of the public forward for general public input. And clerk, please note our time is 7:06. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher the Living Man. I reside at 15th and South Duluth Avenue in Sioux Falls. As you may or may not know, that when I moved here a year and a half ago, I was at that time almost the only person who had heard anything at all about the 5G network in this city. And that if you asked 9 times people out of 10, most of them didn't know anything about it, and if they had heard about it, they didn't know anything. I took it upon myself to put down my own cost, and I printed out 1,500 informational packets on 5G and took it upon myself to pass them out to the entire downtown area in an effort to educate people as to what this network is all about. Since that time, I want to mention that I have come across many illuminating facts about the 5G network, and one of those facts is that there are now several sites in the U.S. that are dedicated fully to fighting this going into their city, and that there have been people that have actually stood up to the federal government and said, no, you are not installing that here. You are not going to do that without a study, whatever the case may be. Also recently came across a mainstream media article involving disagreements to this rollout by varying U.S. senators. It would seem that our mayor is infamous for his stubborn stance on actually wanting the network installed here. I have to ask the citizens of Sioux Falls, he was mentioned several times in that article, that's why I mentioned that. Are you citizens of Sioux Falls willing to blindly allow the mayor to agree to all of this on your own behalf and willingly submit to being a designated guinea pig for this new tech that is very much unstudied, unregulated, and so on? This is all new frequencies on the higher and lower frequency spectrum. It's very, very dangerous. I will finish this up by stating that not long ago I submitted a FOIA to the city asking for their plans for installing 5G and making Sioux Falls into a smart city. They immediately volleyed back to me that there might be possible fees incurred for this information retrieval, and I then responded with my acknowledgement of that possibility and told them to go ahead. Over a month later, I received a host of largely unanswered and fielded questions to my answers to my many questions, leaving me high and dry where all this is concerned, especially concerning any data and proof of the safety of this network. It was shortly after that that I received a bill for the city services in the amount of $116, which, by the way, has already gone to collections, for multimedia support that included an 8-gigabyte drive with a few files copied to it and 12 pages of printed document at 10 cents a copy. I feel that we are already paying these people to do their jobs via your taxes. Why are we agreeing to pay them again to do the work that we already pay them to do? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Sioux Falls. We've seen that the mayor wants to put 2 street crimes officers to handle pimping, prostitution, whatever. So I hope council approves this because we have 4 undercover officers The crime on sex trafficking is steady. Sometimes you gotta bust the little people till you get to the big people. We do have human trafficking here. You know as well as I know, someone has to come forward. That's why I'm actively trying to bust these illegal massages and get them into court 5 and 7 and 10 times until they snitch on each other. I had a conversation on Saturday at the police department with the Department of Justice out of Iowa. Some of these illegal massage therapists are in cahoots with Iowa and Minnesota. Iowa is right now investigating a federal case of human trafficking that's supposed to be in the works and supposed to be hitting media coming up here. I can't stress enough how sex trafficking is really important to get not to the poor people, but to the rich people, and I mean rich people behind this. And I can't even begin to disclose the people that I have uncovered that is paying for sex and operating and paying these people out of their pockets here. I want to get to media prostitution. I'm on these websites and I'm seeing news reporter looking for a sugar daddy. And I want to emphasize this as much as I can, that it is still a form of prostitution here. I have called the media and told the media if they would pay their employees more competitive wages, we wouldn't have none of their news reporters looking for sugar daddies on these websites. Mayor, I want to thank you for putting these 2 officers into the budget. Hopefully it gets approved. And we still need more officers on these streets fighting crime. They're keeping their heads above water on this crime. The stress level on these police officers are very high, and they cannot keep up, and are doing long hours, 12, 14, 16 hours a day because they're short-staffed. So when I come up here and ask, please, can we do this? It's coming from the police department's mouth. The police cannot get up here and say this, okay? We have crime, we need to fight it, and we need officers to fight, especially sex trafficking online. Y'all just can't believe, I cannot even begin to tell you that this is a Las Vegas strip mall here on Sundays. People are in church parking lots asking for money, propositioning for sexual favors for money. Okay, it's really bad out here. So thank you, Mayor, again for doing this.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? All right, clerk, next items, please.
The next items are items that were pulled from the consent agenda, items 21 and 22. The following abatements are recommended for denial by the Minnehaha County Director of Equalization. Trent W. and Tammy Baumgartel, 2009 South Canyon Avenue, parcel number 85978 for 2018 property taxes in the amount of $1,101.38. Reason did not apply for owner-occupied status by the deadline. Item 22, Trent W. and Tammy Baumgartel, 2009 South Canyon Avenue, parcel number 85978 for 2017 property taxes in the amount of $1,060.82. Reason did not apply for the owner-occupied status by the deadline.
Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the way I wouldn't mind starting is, I know the Baumgartels are here, and if they would explain why they missed the deadline, and I think we have that opportunity, that's why they're appealing to us to hear from them. So I think in their words would be the best way to start.
Sounds good. If the Baumgartels are here,
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead and come forward. Good evening.
Thank you. Tammy, I'm Trent. We kind of ran into a situation where it's kind of an oddball deal. The neighbor came across the street, asked us about the assessment of their recent property, if we had received our assessment, et cetera, et cetera. And no, we hadn't. We've got a bit of a mail issue problem over there in that particular development. And so they're working on it. So anyway, we got a card the next day saying that, or next or 2 days or whatever, we got the card saying that our taxes were assessed at such and such and such. And Tammy, being a vice president at one of the,
I work in commercial real estate, so I'm familiar with it. So I started researching the assessed value. That led to me checking the neighbors. And ours was assessed much higher than houses comparable to our house. We built this house 3 years ago. Hadn't really thought about it. The taxes went up from the beginning from like $2,000 to $6,000, knowing it was going to go up. So when I called the assessor's office and found out it was assessed properly, I was shocked. And then I found out there's this occupied dwelling form that had not been filed. And then when they explained what it was, I immediately went back and I did file that. My builder handed it to me, said highlighted it, take it down there. I did do that. I dropped it off, turned it in. Of course, there's no proof we did that. So we went back and forth. That's how he got involved. And we did do this. He went in, talked to someone at the assessor's office. They sent him back and forth. He was supposed to have a hearing with the county. No one notified him until yesterday to come here. We're arguing that we've been in that house. We have been occupied. We turned the form in. We did everything. I mean, I only found out by looking at the neighbors' houses that were assessed $1,000 more than houses that are comparable.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's where we are now.
Okay. Counselors, do you have any questions for the Baumgartels on this? Counselor Kiley?
Thank you. And I had a chance to speak with you, Trent, and you stated that you, at that time, that you had turned the form in, but unfortunately, you don't have any record of.
I turned it in.
But you don't have a copy or a record of that transaction, and that the county has stated they do not have that.
When he turned this form in, sir, they wouldn't even give him a copy. He had to ask for it to get this one.
Right.
So I didn't ask for a copy. I didn't know I needed it. I didn't know, I'm new to Sioux Falls. When I moved here to marry him, I didn't know it was a big deal to have these forms, and we don't have this where I come from. So pardon my negligence on that.
And I've owned 3 houses in Sioux Falls, and never once have I had to fill out a form and turn it in. This is the first house we've built and moved into, but I've owned 3 houses in this town since '91.
But the county has told you they do not have record of that document.
That's right, that's right.
Correct.
Thank you. One other question, and that would be for maybe the clerk. When does the county hear this particular case?
They'll put it on their agenda. Typically, what they've been doing the past several months and in the past few years is it will generally be the week after our council meeting. But they do have a note to contact you when it's on theirs.
Trent, after we discussed, I know you had a opportunity. I put you in contact with Commissioner Karski, who actually oversees this particular area too. Was he able to do any other further follow-up on his end, on the county end, to help determine or locate that document?
I would say probably limited at best. He suggested possible legislation that I speak with my state legislator to possibly change this law that is binding. As I understand, we have very little recourse or whatever to even look at this opportunity and say, hey, go back and whatnot. And it's a small amount of money. There's no question. It's a small amount of money. But it's one of those things where you just kind of, okay, well, had we not found about this certified owner-occupied dwelling thing, and like I said, this is my 3rd home that I've lived in and owned in this town, and it's the first time I've had this scenario. And so had Tammy not looked into this and followed up with this, 10 years down the road, we wouldn't know anything about this, and we would still be charged the taxes based on the owner-occupied, although we would obviously be the owner-occupied dwelling. And because it's a VA-funded loan, the bank would not allow my funding to be anything than my primary residence to begin with. And then because it's VA funding, they don't allow the banks to charge me and my wife PMI on that particular, not that that's even a deal right now, but it's one of those things where it's just, we wouldn't know about this, and so had we not dug into it.
I assumed it was there. I took it in, my builder highlighted it, I remember it. I took it down probably the very next week. I'm down at City Hall all the time for where I work, so it's not like I wouldn't make the trip.
Counselor Neitzer?
And I would echo it, as I recall when I've turned these in, that you don't get a copy, and the only way you know it's been filed is I think you get some sort of a postcard in the mail later indicating that you've got owner-occupied status. So I could completely understand. You would have gotten a postcard, but apparently you didn't. But I know what you mean. Normally, if they file it, you get a postcard, as I recall, in the mail a few weeks later that confirms you've got the owner-occupied status.
You didn't get one from this one filed or a month ago.
Yeah, no, I understand, but that's normally what would happen with when they turn that in. The question I have is, Is this something that every jurisdiction has to approve, or can the county overrule our decision? Who has the final call on this?
Well, if you look at the agenda, this is a recommendation. So all the city council does is recommend to the council. So their remedy is actually with the county, rather. Statutorily, there's a statute on this, SDCL 10-13-40, and that's the statute that sets the date as March 15th of each year. And so if they have a concern regarding, they filed a document that the county lost, for example, that what I would advise the city on is that the only exception to this statutorily is if they're active duty military members. And so the recommendation tonight, it's essentially jurisdictional from our point of view if the documents weren't filed, and then subsequently they'd have a hearing with the county and you'd be able to address that with the county, and if you have any types of issues, then you could consider taking legal action against the county in that regard. So we can't speak to that factually on that part, but from here it's just a recommendation, legally speaking, and then you go to the county next.
And thank you for giving me that SDCL, because I was trying to look that up, but I did recall that it was pretty black and white. We really had no latitude in that particular deal. I will say I think the system is silly. It needs to be changed, but it is the state law, so my hands may be tied here. So,
Councilor Staley, did you have a comment?
My first question is, how does you even fall into having to have this owner-occupied forum? What does that mean? Somebody's come off a rental situation, or I mean, okay, Councilor Selberg,
Yes. Anytime you buy a house, you fill that out immediately, or at least not immediately, but you are, at least with offices I've been associated with, will send out a reminder every November that says you bought a house this past year, be sure to get to the courthouse by March 15th, file this with the county.
So any person who's buying real estate through the open market has to do this?
Yeah, you verify that you're occupying it.
Okay, wow, okay.
I won't speak for every single situation, at least that's the way I'm familiar with it from my profession.
Can I ask what the difference in property tax amount it is?
Like $1,100 a year.
And you've already,
That's
I wasn't sure, that was the difference, okay. And then my other question for the city attorney is that if we aren't, why is it even in front of us if why are we even voting on this if we really have no authority? I mean, is it just in case they have that military exemption? Is that why it's before us?
No.
Well,
Frankly, I'm not sure. It goes back and forth between the county and the city, and I'd have to check. I'm not sure.
so let me be clear. If when we vote, if I was to vote yes, does that mean I'm on with them? I'm saying that we should retroactively
Will
change
depend
it.
on the motion that we make. If the motion is for denial, then that would be the recommendation that would carry forward to the county.
Right, but I mean, we get to vote. I mean, we're going to be voting separately. So if we're denying if we vote yes for the denial, we're voting against what they're asking for.
Right.
And what I should add is that the city is an interested party in that they they receive a portion of the property taxes. And so that would be the city's interest in this, but ultimately it's a county decision.
Councilor Starr?
So then, Mr. Mayor, I guess my question is, would it be in order to make a motion to recommend to approve?
Any motion would need to be noticed and separate. I mean, your option here tonight is to vote yes or no on this agenda item. Any new item? We'll go ahead.
And if I could just add to that, so the recommendation that was put in front of you is a recommendation for denial. So if you, and just follow this, if you vote to approve this item, then you would be denying it. If you vote in the negative, then you would be supporting it. And we faced something similar to this earlier this past year.
So, but Mr. Mayor, if I could, just to continue to be in order, I would Could I defer to another meeting to make a motion to recommend that the county approve the application? So to do that, I would have to, is it possible to defer to the next meeting so that it'd be properly noticed?
Well, if you're asking me, one of the things it would tell you is that the facts aren't going to change. And so there would need to be a motion on the deferral. Right, Tom? And you can argue the motion for the deferral, but, you know, there would need to be some type of basis for the deferral in the sense that, is there some factual unknown as things stand right now that would change the.
So then in my process, I could argue that they did turn this in and it was lost by the county going by the testimony that they made tonight. And that was where the mistake was made, not that they didn't meet the deadline, because the recommendation to deny is based on that it wasn't properly applied for. And they're making the case tonight that they did properly apply for it. Because if they just said, I didn't do it because we didn't know to do it, I would make the argument that they don't meet the statute. Their argument before us tonight is that they did do this and it was, whatever reason, wasn't received by the county and wasn't there. They're not making the argument that they didn't do it. And that's what we're basing or that your office made the recommendation, was that they didn't meet the deadline. And their argument is that they did.
The recommendation is based on the fact that the county doesn't have a record that they filed the document. And so you make the recommendation tonight, the county has to consider that. And like I mentioned earlier, that would be their remedy with the county based on a failure for the county to have that file in their records.
But excuse me, aren't we then kind of voting on whether we believe these people or not?
No, well, you're voting based on the lack of a record of the document being filed. And if the county made an error, they have a remedy with the county to address that.
Counselor Kiley, I'm sorry.
Do both?
I'm going to give, Counselor Selberg has tried to chime in, so Counselor Selberg first.
So this doesn't work in any way like our Board of Equalization, where we kind of go along the same route, where we either approve or deny requests and then say, you may disagree with our decision tonight, but you can go appeal it to here. Is it working the same way, kind of, or no?
Yeah, there's no final action that's taken tonight.
Right, so they still have means to.
Exactly, that's.
Break it down. This is kind of what we just did a couple weeks ago, and can it be the same?
Right, this is not a hearing, the county's not present to testify, that type of thing, so.
And my question is, do both bodies, the city council and the county, have to agree?
No, they've disagreed in the past.
Okay.
So Mr. Mayor, here's what I'm going to do then. I'm going to move that items 21 and 22 for the recommendation for denial.
Okay, so there's a motion
Second.
to recommend denial from Counselor Starr and seconded by Counselor Staley. Okay, any further discussion on that?
Yes, so
Counselor
with
Starr?
that motion, because that's the recommendation that we have to follow from the city attorney's office, I'm going to be voting no so that the county commission understands that we don't agree. And so that would be the motion that was in order, and I believe that that's the advice we got from the city attorney. You have the ability, so even if this motion fails, that motion will be moved forward. So you have the ability as fellow counselors to vote that the recommendation, or I'm going to choose to vote against the recommendation, so that message is at least sent to the county commission, and then you'll be notified when the county commission meets to do that as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, Counselor Kiley?
Well, as difficult as this is, especially with the individual standing in front of us, I hesitate to make a judgment. And I'm not saying that I don't believe you, but it's not like we have the county before us to state their position on this. And I'm not comfortable in making that decision that they lost it when I don't have both sides of the stories. So I'm going to be forced to say vote in favor of this denial, but it's ultimately going to be decided by the county next week.
Counselor Staley?
Well, and I agree with Counselor Starr that it does I'm going to be voting no on this as well, because I think it does send a message to the county. And I happen to be at a meeting. I'm going to tell you to make sure that you verify when the meeting's going to be with the county, because there was another instance where a couple was not notified that they were having their county meeting, and it just so happened that at the last minute they somehow found out. So that's, notification's important. And let me also say that within this body, we received, we had a situation with Matt Metzger about 2.5 years ago where he was apparently sent a letter from the city that they were going to be annexing his property, taking action on it. He didn't receive it. And he came in front of us and said he didn't receive it. And the city did say, well, it wasn't registered mail and we aren't required to receive verification, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's not like these things don't happen sometimes where there's missteps. So I would rather err on the side of the citizens' well-being.
Counselor Selberg?
Yeah, it is unfortunate, and I'm sorry for your inconvenience, but I'm going to kind of handle it along the ways that we've done this we did it for the week of Board of Equalization, where I'm going to vote along with moving it along, but you will have another option, another step. Hope that makes sense.
Counselor Neitzer?
I'm just going to vote in what I think is in compliance with state laws, that there's no record that it was filed. I can't make a judgment based on incomplete testimony whether or not it was filed or not, and so I'm going to have to vote for the denial, and that's no judgment as to the veracity of the statements. It's just that this isn't a hearing where everybody has the chance to give all sides.
Counselor Brecky?
Can I ask a further question?
Sure.
Can you relate to me again? You talked about, did you say that the builder gave you back what the builder said you filed?
When we went to closing that day, our builder handed our packet at closing with our builder there. And he said, right on the top of our packet, make sure you take this form, and it was highlighted with dates on a yellow highlighter, take this in or you'll pay more taxes. He said that to me. Make sure you take it in by that date to where it says. So I did it, because I would make sure to do that. I mean, I was a person that kept spreadsheets on every cost of everything we did when we built our house. I'm OCD about stuff like that. I probably took it the very next day, to be honest with you.
So you're testifying tonight that you did do it, and so.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just wanting to politely send a message to the county that I'm believing the testimony tonight, and county makes mistakes, city makes mistakes, and they're ultimately going to decide, but I'd like to just send that message that way. So that's how I'm going to vote.
All right, I'll call for the vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
No.
Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
No.
Staley?
No.
Brecky?
No.
Yes. All right, that item passes 5-4.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 31, new 2019 retail wine and cider license for Hampton Inn by Hilton, 2417 South Carolina Avenue, CUP not required. Item 32, new 2019 retail wine and cider license for Hampton Inn and Suites by Hilton, 3701 West Avera Drive, CUP not required. Item 33, new 2019 retail wine and cider license for Nail World, 3209 South Sertoma Avenue, CUP not required. Item 34, transfer of 2018-19 retail malt beverage and South Dakota farm wine license and 2019 retail wine license, including video lottery terminals, from Dorinda Martinez, Blue Martini, 2309 West Madison Street, to Juan Nuno, La Coretta, 2309 West Madison Street, with conditional use permit 8110-2018 being approved on March 7th, 2018. Item 35, transfer of 2019 package liquor license from Sports Zone Incorporated, the District, 4521 West Empire Place, to Rome Kitchen and Bar, 4525 West Empire Place, CUP not required. Item 36, special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Catering America, Chef Dominique's Catering, to be operated at Liberty National Bank, 133 South Main Avenue, for a social on April 23rd, 2019. Item 37, special one-day malt beverage license for Friends of the Big Sioux River to be operated at the Great Outdoor Store, 201 East 10th Street, for a fundraiser on May 4th, 2019. Item 38, special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Sculpture Walk Incorporated to be operated at Raven Industries, 205 East 6th Street for an Arc of Dreams dedication on May 31st, 2019. Item 39, special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for commemorative Air Force Joe Foss Squadron to be operated at the Maverick Air Center, 4201 North Maverick Place for a fundraiser on August 15th and September 21st, 2019.
Good evening, Jamie.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer with licensing. I'm here to answer any questions on the items 31 through 39, as well as I'm going to need to request a motion to amend item 38 by changing the date of this request from May 31st to June 8th, 2019. This project is delayed due to all the flooding issues throughout the state.
Got it. Thanks, Jamie. Anyone from the public here to speak on any of these items tonight?
Move to approve items 31 through 39.
Second.
All right, motion by Erickson to approve 31 to 39, seconded by Kylie.
Mr. Mayor, if I can make a motion to amend item 38 by replacing May 31, 2019 with June 8th, 2019.
Second.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Sale on that amendment. Any discussion on that amendment? Let's take a vote on that, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley? Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. So now we're on to the amended main motion to approve items 31 through 39. Any further discussion on those? All right, let's take a vote on those, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley? Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item, please.
Item 40, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended and restated lease and sublease agreement between the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota Department of Game, Fish and Parks and the Butterfly House and Aquarium Incorporated.
Hey, Mike.
Good evening, councilors. Mike Patton, City Parks and Recreation Department. We introduced this topic last week. It's amended and restated lease sublease for Sertoma Park. I won't go over all the details, but I will cover some of the basis. It's a three-party agreement between the City of Sioux Falls, State of South Dakota, and the Butterfly House and Aquarium. The existing sublease terminates January of 2022. There is planned facility expansions by both the state and the Butterfly House and Aquarium. The proposed sublease termination date will be June 30th, 2045. There's no rental payments involved. The new lease will guarantee access on the existing park road. All uses will remain the same. No subleasing will be permitted. All park improvements must coincide with the Sertoma Park Master Plan. They must be approved by the city and the state, comply with all applicable building codes. All the maintenance responsibilities remain the same, and all parties agree in good faith to renegotiate the lease prior to 1 year prior to the termination of it. So with that, we have members of city staff as well as the state Game, Fish and Parks and the Butterfly House and Aquarium that can address any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Councilors, do you have questions for Mike or for any of our guests? Yeah, Councilor Neitzer.
So just reading the contract so I can clarify, the way I read it was the Butterfly House, they have some latitude to change a business model in terms of maybe they have some other exhibit or go a slightly different direction as long as it stays in the vein of like a recreational sort of deal. They just can't go.
Recreation, education, natural environment.
And they wouldn't have to, that wouldn't require them to come back to the park sport each time or anything? Would that, or?
As long as it's consistent with the master plan.
Okay.
Which would be a recreational or educational purpose.
All right, so they can, I mean, within that confine, they can move with the market. They just couldn't completely change it into a restaurant, as an example.
That's fair to say.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions, council, on this? Look for a motion on this item.
Move approval, Neitzer.
All right.
Second, Selberg.
Motion approved by Neitzer and seconded by Selberg. Any discussion here? A vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg? Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Item 41.
Item 41, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota approving the naming of a facility on public property, Lloyd Lawn at Levitt Shell.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, good evening. Jackie Nelson, Administrative Manager, Parks and Recreation. Here to talk to you tonight about a naming application before you for the lawn at the Levitt Shell, Sioux Falls. So as a reminder, the Levitt has a partnership with the City of Sioux Falls as well as the National Levitt Foundation. And as part of that agreement, they do have the opportunity to accept and utilize gifts, donations, and other contributions and benefits for recognition or naming rights being a condition of providing. The naming application before you is a request from the Friends of Levitt Shell with a sponsorship partnership agreement with Lloyd Companies. As part of that sponsorship agreement, it would be to rename the lawn at the Levitt Shell the Lloyd Lawn at the Levitt Shell. In terms of renaming the lawn at the Levitt Shell and the sponsorship agreement, there are some key components. The first thing is, again, this is a partnership between Lloyd Companies and the Friends of the Levitt Shell. The sponsorship would allow for the lawn to be recognized as the Lloyd Lawn at Levitt Shell. As part of the sponsorship, their logo would be placed on the concrete pad that's currently poured for equipment or sound and lighting. Within this agreement, this is a 5-year agreement beginning May 1st, 2019, ending September 30th of 2024. There will be 5 annual payments of $10,000 each as part of this agreement. Also within the agreement, Lloyd Companies would be responsible for all signage maintenance, upkeep, and removal. In terms of the concrete pad, there's some pictures located on the slide in front of you, as well as a proposed logo that Lloyd would be putting onto that concrete pad as part of the agreement. Currently, as part of the agreement signed between Levitt and Lloyd Properties, it is the logo on the concrete slab. The Parks Board did unanimously approve this on March 20th, and staff recommends for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Counselors, do you have questions for Jackie on this one? Yeah.
Move to approve Erickson.
Second, Selberg.
All right, motion approved by Erickson and seconded by Selberg. Any discussion? A vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie? Yes. Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Item 42, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, authorizing the mayor to enter into a purchase agreement of real property from Northern States Power Company and granting easements to Northern States Power Company within Falls Park and within city property near Veterans Parkway.
Hi, Don.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation. This particular item involves the acquisition of the Falls Park substation from Northern States Power. There are 2 parcels that we would be acquiring.
Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse
Councilor
myself
Kiley.
from this item and the next item as well. Thank you.
All right, absolutely.
So there are 2 parcels that we're looking to acquire as was part of this purchase agreement. As noted on the site plan outlined in yellow, they comprise approximately 4 acres in total. As I mentioned last week, we did have a phase 1 environmental assessment done on them, and there were no significant issues identified in that assessment. The purchase price for this particular parcel is for $1 and other valuable consideration. There will be some easements retained on this site. The orange line that goes east to west through Falls Park identifies the underground easement that would be granted, and then the yellow shaded area identify the overhead easements that would be retained. And then as part of this agreement, NSP will also be releasing a 1976 easement that was in place prior to putting this agreement together. As we mentioned, we learned a little bit about the lion snake last week, and as you know, as part of the environmental assessment on South Dakota 100 or Veterans Parkway, they did find it on the project site, and since it is an endangered species in the state of South Dakota Department of Transportation did purchase a 26-acre conservation easement for the protection of the lion snake. So as part of this agreement, the or when that property was transferred from NSP to the state, inadvertently there was a 75-foot wide easement that was left off of the final plat. And so that red hatched area is the area that we would like to grant to NSP so they can maintain and take care of a major power line that serves Sioux Falls as part of this purchase agreement. This has gone through the Parks and Recreation Board, and they unanimously recommended approval, and staff recommends approval as well. Again, city staff are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Don. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item tonight? Come forward, young man.
I'm David Zokaitis, and I'm back in town. But I'm here mostly to thank NSP for this really cool gift that they're giving to the city. For $1, but basically nothing, we get 4 acres to add to our park. I mean, what could be better? This is totally cool, and we should thank NSP, so that's why I'm here.
Thanks, David. All right. Anyone else here to speak on this item? Counselors, you have questions for Don or any staff on this one?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Sale.
All right, a motion to approve by Counselor Erickson, seconded by Sale. Any discussion, council? A vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Item 43.
Item 43, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, authorizing the mayor to enter into a purchase agreement of real property at 1600 North Riverside Drive from Northern States Power Company and granting easements to Northern States Power Company.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Don again. This property is located just north of Falls Park. As we were working on the item that you just previously approved, NSP inquired about our interest in this particular piece of property because they have relocated their infrastructure off of the site for the most part, and it is adjacent to the Big Sioux River as part of the River Greenway Master Plan and adjacent to the bike trail. So we indicated our interest in this property. It's about 1.1 acres in size. Again, we did it at Phase 1 environmental and found no significant issues. The purchase price on this property is $26,847.82. And this, again, would be granting back easements for overhead power that they have, would like to retain on this entire parcel. And then also just a reminder that this too went through the Parks and Recreation Board, and they recommend approval as does staff. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Don. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Counselors, do you have questions for Don on this one?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion approved by Erickson, seconded by Sale. Discussion, council? All right, a vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Counselor Sale, I ask that you go get your colleague out of the timeout room there. And we will move to our next item, item 44.
Item 44, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving a Verizon fiber optic easement.
Hi, Diane.
Good evening. My name is Diane Best. I'm here as legal advisor for the Public Works Department. Here to talk about a Verizon easement. The ordinance would grant an easement to Verizon. It pertains to the north end of rail yard property that the city purchased from BNSF in 2015. The city bought the property subject to existing utility and telecommunications interests. BNSF had allowed Verizon the opportunity to install a fiber optic line north and south through this parcel. There was never an easement recorded for the Verizon fiber optic line. The city contacted Verizon and had an exhibit prepared with the exact location. That would clear up the public record of the property for future development and gives us an opportunity to have a recorded easement on it. We would ask the city council to approve the easement.
Thanks, Diane. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item this evening? Counselors, do you have any questions for Diane on this one? All right, I'd ask for a motion on this.
Move to approve.
Second, Sale.
Move to approve, Kylie, seconded by Sale. Any discussion, council? Vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Delberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star? Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Next item.
Item 45, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 7201 South Minnesota Avenue from the LW Live Work and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar Districts to the O Office C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar and C3 Commercial Community Districts, number 10029-2019, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval 7-0. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, May 7th, 2019.
Hey, Albert.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Albert Schmidt, City of Sioux Falls Planning and Development Services Division. This one is located on South Minnesota Avenue. The applicant owner is Eric Helland with Landscape Garden Center. It's located kind of the northwest corner of 81st Street, the future 81st Street area there, and Minnesota Avenue. The total size is approximately 8.31 acres, and the purpose is to rezone this for redevelopment for the existing Landscape Garden Center to relocate and rebuild on this site. A new retail center and bank will be constructed adjacent to Minnesota Avenue, and again, the new landscape center will be actually built more towards the west, inland, away from Minnesota Avenue there.
Thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item this evening? Counselors, do you have any questions for Albert? Counselor Neitzer?
Can I assume 81st Street would be dedicated, completed, access would go off of there, and you'd close the accesses that are there now for, you know, like the Landscape Garden Center?
81st Street, yes, would become a fully dedicated one, and most of those right-of-ways would be, or accesses would likely be taken away with that change.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Staley?
Yeah, you know, this is kind of interesting because we addressed this piece of property at the Board of Equalization, not knowing that they were going to be parceling anything off. So, because at the time when I heard their argument, their plea, and I'm going to just throw some, I think that they were assessed at $800,000, and it was being, or they had been paying $800,000, and I think we were taking it up to $3 million, maybe $2 or $3 million. But anyway, my thought at the time was, you know, this is all going to be used for trees and just storage space. So now we're seeing that, like, what percentage of their current property is going to be redeveloped?
Well,
Albert, would you say like
I would say a vast majority of this will be redeveloped. You can see kind of on their concept plan here, the building on the west, so you can look at where a future 81st Street is going to go in there. The furthest west building along 81st Street there, that's the future Landscape Garden Center main facility there. So you can see that's kind of the remainder where they'll be on their site there for their retail sales.
So we can expect that in the future, if they probably won't come in and contest any kind of raise up in their assessments, I would think. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm glad that they're still going to be here because it's a fabulous service for all of us. We like their landscape and plant service. So.
Councilor Neitzer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I happen to know the owner, and I served with him on the Board of Adjustment. He's a good guy, but thinking about the timing of when we had those hearings and when the application for the rezone went in, I'd bet $1 to a donut it may have been in before. So that's just maybe guidance for the future. As we hear testimonies, you always have to take some things with a grain of salt. But I'm glad to see it done, except for the fact, if there's any way that they can figure out how to reduce or get some of that parking away or getting away from the street. It's just a sea of parking lots, but that's me. So,
thanks, Counselor. Any other questions on this one? I'd look for a motion on this.
Move approval, Selberg. Second.
Move to approve, Kylie, seconded by Selberg. Any further discussion? I vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Recky.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Item 46.
Item 46, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located west of South Schaefer Drive and south of East 26th Street from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District to the RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban and CN Conservation Districts, number 9926-2019, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 7-0 with the following conditions: that the RD2 Townhome Residential Suburban District zone parcels allow development of the following forms: DD2 Detached Dwelling Suburban, AD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban, and AD2 Townhome Residential Suburban. Recommendation: set a date of second reading for Tuesday, May 7th, 2019.
The applicant owner here is Brady Hyde with Empire Homes. It's located here just to the east of Veterans Parkway along Silverthorne and Schaefer avenues, access off of Schaefer. Size is approximately 5.85 acres between the two, and the purpose is to utilize 2.3 acres for a drainage way, and the remaining 3.5 acres will be used to construct 7 4-unit townhomes on the site. And this is kind of the layout that they're proposing at this time.
All right, thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item tonight? Councilors, you have questions for Albert on this one? Councilor Starr.
Yes. Albert, could you just explain maybe the Planning Commission's concerns and why they chose these recommendations to add or these stipulations?
Good question. So this location, we suggested neighborhood meeting. The Empire Homes conducted one at their office with the neighbors, reached out, they came in, and there were some concerns with density and different things going on in the area. And so based on what the builder wanted to do and what the zoning was, they said, we don't need to do anything more than this, so let's get rid of the denser allowances in that zoning district. And that kind of met the concerns of the neighborhood with that density. And so that's why we put that condition on there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions, Councilor Nitzert?
So in plain English, the condition removes the ability to do 8 plexes, which would be allowed in the zoning district.
Correct.
And I do want to recognize we have some of these issues sometimes. This particular owner is very, very good to work with, and this is not the first time that they've voluntarily made a change based on citizen concerns, and that's very admirable.
Thank you. Look for a motion on this item.
Move approval, Nitzert.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion approved by Nitzert, seconded by Sale. Any discussion, council? A vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson.
Yes.
Kylie.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Recky.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Next item.
Item 47, first reading.
Excuse me.
Councilor
I'm
Staley.
going to recuse myself as an employee of USF.
All right, Councilor Staley, you're recused. Go ahead, Tom.
Item 47, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 6800 South Cliff Avenue from the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar and S2 Institutional Campus Plan Unit Development Districts to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar and O Office Districts, number 10016-2019, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 7-0. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, May 7th, 2019.
Council, the applicant is Chad Koopman and Thane Paulson. The owner is USF, University of Sioux Falls. It's located north of East 77th Street and east of South Cliff Avenue. The size is approximately 3.3 acres, and the purpose is to construct a motor vehicle repair business, a mini storage garage area, and a dance studio on site.
Thanks, Albert. Anyone from the public care to speak on this item this evening? Councilors, you have questions. Councilor Nitzert.
So remind me, I haven't looked at the ordinance in a while. Do these zoning districts, would they require residential compatible self-storage with, like pitched roofs with shingles and siding?
If my memory serves me correctly on that one, it depends on what the abutting uses are on this one, with it being the institutional uses north of there. And it being retail, I don't believe they're going to require that side of it, if I remember correctly.
Were they proposing to do the storage units in the C2?
The C2 on the north side, they're kind of,
Oh, right there,
the
what kind of
parcel
those
one is
rectangles
on
are?
there. You can kind of draw a line that kind of goes along with that blue line at an angle there.
Gotcha.
Anything north of that is going to be storage up there, tucked away. And then the commercial along 77th Street, that's where you're going to see the motor vehicle repair business. And then the office is where you would see the dance studio.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Other questions for Albert, council? Look for a motion on this item.
Move to approve sale.
Second, Kylie.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Kylie to have a second reading on Tuesday, May 7th. Any further discussion? Vote on this, council.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Councilor Sale, will you want to grab Councilor Staley?
I sure will.
And we will move on to our next item, item 48.
Item 48, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property located west of South Carroll Drive and south of Westbrook Drive from the AG Agriculture District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban and RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban Districts, number 10019-2019, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval, 7-0. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, May 7th, 2019.
So this location, the applicant is Damian Gribble, and the owner is Westwood Valley LLC. They currently own the existing division to the east. They're expanding out to the west. It's located northwest of 41st and Ellis Road. It's kind of in the middle of a section, so it's kind of an additional area from where they're already building out. The size is approximately 6.4 acres, and the purpose is construct or to continue to construct single-family and twin home residential development along with the existing development to the east.
Thanks, Albert. Anyone wish to speak on this item from the audience tonight? Councilors, do you have questions for Albert on this one?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to set second reading and for Tuesday, May 7th.
Okay.
Second, Selberg.
Motion by Councilor Starr, seconded by Selberg on that. Any discussion, council? All right, a vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie? Yes. Neitzer?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Item 49.
Item 49, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations to acquire homes in flood-prone areas in proximity to Tomar Park. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for the special city council meeting of Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019.
Hey, TJ.
Good afternoon, or good evening, City Council. TJ Nelson, Mayor's Office. Come before you tonight with a proposal to begin the transformation of the Rose Lotta area to green space. As you know, that area was deeply impacted by the mid-March flooding incidents, and with a lot of discussion with the homeowners in that area, as well as city staff and the administration, we feel that long-term, it would be in the best interest to voluntarily buy out those properties and return it to green space. So before you is a map of the area. The yellow area are the properties that we would be interested in purchasing. There are 55 total, 38 of which are in the FEMA 100-year floodplain, and all of those homes are in the 500-year floodplain. The assessed value of the area is $5.3 million, and the average home value is about $93,000. One of the homes, and I thank you to Councilor Staley, she brought this up with us also. There is one historic home placed in that area. It was built by the very first mayor of Sioux Falls at the current Washington Pavilion site. Later moved to All Saints by the Lyons family, and they occupied it until, I believe, the 80s when the city took possession. The city at that time actually wanted to demolish it, but the citizens spoke up and it was moved to this area in 1988. So we are committed to working with the current owner or a future owner to relocate that home to another spot. So floodplain history, and Albert's going to help me out here on the mapping of this. So, like I said, this area has been on the floodplain for a long time. The 1979 floodplain kind of followed the roadway in that area. So the homes weren't necessarily there. And I should also mention that the first homes were built or placed here in about the 1930s, several in the 50s, and this area began to be annexed into the city between 1960 and 1970. So 79 is the best records we have. For the first time it was put in the floodplain. 2009 encompassed a larger area of that. That's the green slotted area. And then 2017, when FEMA redrew the lines after our levee system was improved, that is the current blue line flood map that we're looking at for those 38 properties. So long-term, what should we do? So like I said, we want to return this to green space area, create a voluntary buyout program for those property owners. What we're proposing tonight is $1 million from the 2018 surplus funds to go to the parkland acquisition budget that would allow the city to begin this process. In the long term, we would program dollars into the CIP in subsequent years. That amount yet to be determined, but it would be a multi-year process to buy this out, because it would depend on the council administration's budget appetite in future years, as well as the property owners who are interested in selling. And then long term, once all that property has been purchased, we will work with the parks team and create a master plan to add to that park system for what would be the current and future needs of park user demand in that area. So next steps, council approval of that appropriation. We will then work with those property owners to assess the damage from the flood damage. Our real, what we really want to accomplish with this $1 million is to help those homeowners who were just devastated and live in uninhabitable homes at the moment. You know, there are a couple of basement collapses in this area. A lot of people don't have furnaces, water heaters. They need new electrical. So we really want to help them out as soon as we can yet this year with this $1 million. And then in future years, look for those voluntary buyouts of people who are maybe impacted but have a livable home at the moment. We want to survey the floodplain to survey that elevation of those homes. And then we'll work through independent appraisals of those properties with the interested sellers to make sure we come to an agreed price that is agreed upon between both parties. And then we'll begin the purchase of those properties through this prioritization. So first of all, first criteria on the 100-year floodplain. Currently uninhabitable due to flood-related damage. At or below the flood base. Some homes in that area have been raised 2 feet or more above the flood basin or the flood elevation. We also want to look at if they're close to that 50% of their structure value. Now this comes into play for those people who need all new mechanical, maybe need to raise their elevation, because FEMA has that 50%. So if you get into that substantive changes, you have to raise your structure. And that's a very expensive. We contacted some contractors and they estimate about $50 per square foot to raise a home. And these are 800 to 1,000 square foot homes. We would also look to these to be adjacent to affected or purchased properties, so we can start to block out that. And then owner occupied status, and then if they have flood insurance, which, as you might know, if you have a mortgage in a 100 floodplain, you are required to have flood insurance. I know we've got Mark Cotter here with Public Works, Albert Schmidt with Planning. We're here to take questions. I know there's some of the homeowners from that area here as well tonight, so we will stand by for questions.
Thanks, TJ. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Lynette Ron, and I was one of the lucky ones on Rose Street that was not flooded, but I'm very close. It came right up on my yard. I'm here to support my neighbors who are in homes that can't be in their homes because of the flood damage. So I just would like you to approve this because it would help them out tremendously.
Thanks for being here, Lynette.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak this evening on this item? Good evening.
Tim Stanga. I've talked to a few homeowners myself over there, and there's a few of them that don't want to sell. And they want to know, what is the city going to do when they don't want to sell? What's the city going to do for them? That if it does flood again? Because, again, you're talking about 55 affordable houses that people have bought and lived in for years. There's people that have moved in maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that could afford the places to live. Talking to them, they've seen more water coming up from the street than what they've seen coming through off the river. And I'm just wondering if the city's really looked at all the options on what they can do to help this little, how do you want to say it, the housing development, to where they wouldn't have to move off their property. Is there any way they can do like what they did at Edison Junior High, putting the big culverts underneath the ground, or off of Marion Road to catch the water, to be able to, so it doesn't back up on the streets when they get a 4 to a 5 inch rain. Looking at berms to put alongside West Twin Oaks, to where they can eliminate that road and go in with a berm that goes all the way down that road. I guess the big question is has the city really done much for this little development since this development has been done? I haven't seen it change since I've lived here, and I've seen it flood back in 68, 69, and that was the worst flood that I've ever seen. But if you go up on Twin Oaks Road and you go into the gated community, there was a couple houses flooded in there. What are we going to do, buy them too? Those are $1 million+ houses. So we're going to buy them? I just think that we got to really look at this, and we got to look at all options on what we can do and try to save these houses and try to get them out of the floodplain. I know I feel for these people, but I don't think the city has really looked at what they can do. When they were raising the levies all around the city back when, why didn't they look at this neighborhood too on trying to get this out of the floodplain? So there are a lot of questions that have to be answered. There's a lot of questions that should be looked at. There's a lot of different things that, even the park, you can dig a big hole.
Thanks, Tim.
Take a big hole in there.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item tonight?
Not really, but I probably should.
Good evening.
I'm Mike Foster. Hello, thank you. I had to save, I haven't seen my daughter in a month because all this happened. I don't know where my future's going with it. I had to save her mother sitting out on a snowbank. I don't want to do that again. So if you guys want to step in and help us out, that'd be great. That's about all I got to say.
Thanks, Mike.
Crystal Rivers, 213 West Rose. I just want everybody, as you're considering this, to think of all the people who are going to be affected. I don't want to be on one person's side or another. I think each one of us needs to be considered. The people who can't live in their homes and the people who want to stay where they are. If it's a long-term process, there is going to have to be something done that might prevent it from happening again, especially if you're talking about a 10-year buyout possibility. You're going to have to look at some other things to prevent this being a problem in that 10 years of buyout for the people who sit and stay or wait or don't want to leave. Take everybody into consideration. It's important to every one of us that something happen for us to know what we're doing next. We're sitting here in limbo, not knowing the people who want to stay and the people who need to go. But we need to know, and we need a concrete plan, and we need to know what you are going to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And other cities, they do this. They do the green stuff and get people out of flood zones. It might be very cold-hearted to say this, but when you live in a flood zone and you're renting or you're owning, you know what's coming in that flood zone. So why should the taxpayers pay to rescue these people out of this flood zone? When you know you're buying a house in a flood zone, this is what you get. I'm from Louisiana. We're in flood zones all over. This is what we get when we buy houses in flood zones. So what they want and what the city is doing is like a Band-Aid to a wound. So the people that don't want to move out of that neighborhood, and they get flooded again, and they flood again, and then we're spending thousands of dollars of rescuing people and wasting and paying these tax dollars on rescuing these people. That's not solving the problem. So a berm or a big tank that holds 40 million gallons of water like they did on Marion would be a suggested issue. But I'm going to say this, and I don't want to be cold-hearted, but we can't keep rescuing these people out of here. This is a lot of taxpayers' money here. That's like closing the falls because it's overflowing and people's going in there and being stupid, and we have to rescue them out of there. They knew when they bought this property here, it was a flood zone, and this is why they have insurance to cover it.
Thank you. You cannot, I'm sorry. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight?
I just want to address her.
Can you state your name for the
Eric
record?
Larson. I live at 217 West Rose, and I bought my first house at 217 in 2000. It was my first house, and I was not in a flood zone. That has been in the last maybe 10 years that I was in a flood zone. And what we've gone through in the last month is just something I can't even explain what we've gone through. We just appreciate that you guys are pushing this forward, and we hope you pass this through because we really do need some help. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Anyone else to speak on this item? All right, counselors, do you have questions for our staff on this? I'll start with Counselor Erickson here.
Yeah, TJ, if you could come back for me a little bit, or whomever you want to delegate. Talk to me a little bit about the voluntary plan. We heard 55 total, 38 in the FEMA 100-year. Some are inhabitable, some are still livable and probably questionable as far as how much money somebody can put back into it. And how far is $1 million going to get us? Because we know it's not going to get us far enough.
Right, so if I can.
That was like 6 questions, sorry.
No. So 2 Fridays ago, we sent out a letter to all those property owners asking them for access to assess their home so our inspectors could get in and look at the extent of the damage so we can start documenting that and going through the criteria list here. So, I mean, those homes that, for example, that had collapsed basements, I mean, those are towards the top of the list of if they want to sell. We started tabulating some of those costs. We feel $1 million is the right ask at this time. If we exceed that, we'll either come back or we're gonna have to get creative where we can help those folks out, maybe temporarily. So we've got options. I wish I had a lot of details I could give you on that, but until we can fully assess all of those homes, we just don't know all of the answers to those types of questions right now.
If I could just a couple of follow-ups and then how many are you hoping with $1 million? How many are you hoping? I mean, we know it's about 90-ish thousand a home, give or take some. Are you wanting to expend all of that right away? And what is your goal with that?
We want to get into those interested parties, especially, like I've been to Mike's house. I mean, I've talked with him there the week that it flooded. I mean, he was hit really hard. So we want to get in and document people like him so we can get that list as soon as we can so that we can try to get these folks remedy right away yet this year.
And last one, and I'll have more. What if I don't want to sell? I don't own a home in there. I'm just saying, what if a person in there doesn't want to sell and they're right in the thick of it and they say, sorry, I'm not selling. They don't have to sell?
This is a long-term plan. We understand there'll be folks who are not interested. The long-term vision is to return this to green space, and we understand it could take 5, 10, 15 years to do that, but in the long run, it will be for the benefit of that area, benefit for those folks so they don't have to be exposed to flooding damage in the future.
Thank you.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. TJ, maybe it's kind of the same question, the one that Councilor Erickson asked, but of the $1 million that's going in there right now, the people that have been devastated, that really have nowhere to go right now, will that help those who've been hit the hardest, where people aren't going to be going, I've got nothing, I missed the first $1 million here, when's the next round of funding coming?
We feel that the $1 million should be able to cover all of those folks, but but we're gonna, within the next month, we'd like to be able to assess all those properties so that we have a good answer on how we can stretch those dollars.
Do you have a time frame kind of when you're thinking the next wave of funding might come as you get going? I know a lot of things are hanging a little bit, but.
Yeah, so our hope is that this $1 million is sufficient for this year to help those folks who are in unsalvageable, uninhabitable homes. And then when we come before you with the 2020 CIP budget asks, then we'll start programming those dollars in subsequent years.
And finally, if I could, one more. What has the feedback been overall from the neighborhood so far? Are you getting people that are thankful for this and supportive? You got a lot of people who are digging in going, I'm not leaving, are you?
We have heard from about the majority of the neighborhood, and so far only one uninterested party.
One, okay. Thank you.
Councilor Brecky.
Is this something that FEMA is supportive of? It's kind of my recollection that to the extent that we can control our floodplain and ease into it in a voluntary program like this, in an area where there's already a park and we've already commandeered a lot of the green space in that flood area, is it something that FEMA is supportive of? They like for cities to do this?
Yes, in fact, FEMA gives dollars to the states regularly for these types of programs, and we've talked with the governor's office about using federal funds to help the city assist with these buyouts. So we're looking at funding options like that through FEMA dollars as well.
Thank you. That was my next question, because I thought that they were, oftentimes supportive in that fashion. Thank you.
And if I may add, Mayor,
Sure.
that does require, though, for the federal declaration to be approved for the storm.
Councilor Neitzer.
I do have questions, but I will say in my 5 years on the Board of Adjustment, we dealt with a lot of variances with the floodplain, and you can get your city in quite a bit of trouble. And in fact, we got a nasty gram years ago for approving variances in the floodplain because people were saying, I can't raise my home 2 feet, and there are consequences. They will threaten to pull out. They can take your city off the list, and nobody in your city can get flood insurance. So there are heavy consequences, so I'm sure they'd be very supportive of this. So help me with, when we're talking about appraisals, so let's say theoretically the home was worth 120. We agree that it was worth 120 pre-flood. And then, I don't know, maybe you look at what it's worth now, maybe it's worth 80. What number are we going to be talking about in the buyout, and then where does things like insurance and flood insurance come into play as far as that?
It's going to be a case-by-case basis. The independent party will come in, the third-party appraiser will come in. We really want to look at the pre-flood condition. That's similar to what was done on the Colville Street buyouts. But it's going to be a case-by-case basis, and where flood insurance and other money they've intended to reimburse for me for repairs go towards that. So it's going to be a case-by-case basis, but it'll be a fair price that's agreed to through the appraisal between both parties.
But generally, it would be pre-flood condition? Is that what you're saying?
That's our hope and intent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been a place that I know the city has been looking at potentially for decades. There has to have been a discussion at some point about doing a levee on that area? Do we even have a spitball of how much it would cost to put a levee along that entire area?
Glad you brought that up because one of my slides talking about that was inadvertently deleted, so I apologize. So yeah, this, when you think of the benefit to the taxpayer and how much taxpayer dollars are spent for this area to build like a levee system, there is a high cost of that. It takes several years for FEMA, the Corps of Engineers, to study that thoroughly, to design it, to engineer it, to build it. It has to be equalized. And even when you have a levee system in place in this area, you still have to worry about the water going towards the river and being held back just as much as water coming out. You know, the mid-March flooding event, houses in this area were impacted by both. Is water flow going towards the river as well as coming out of the banks.
Because the elevations of these homes and properties are just too low.
Right, the elevation's very low, there's not a lot of grade there. So it's really, as part of the floodplain, it's really for static water to be held during a flood incident.
And my last question was, I was out there and I actually talked to the owner of the trap bag system who flew in from Florida. I don't recall, do you remember how much we spent on that trap bag system?
I'm gonna look at Mark, I believe altogether probably $100,000 with the supplies and the sand and the labor to install that system.
So, I mean, that's something that has to be factored in as well as each time then there's a deployment of something like that, all of the sandbagging efforts, the rescue operations.
Correct.
So,
And we did that this time, we did that in 97, 93, I believe, have had similar flood mitigation efforts put into place.
okay, thanks.
Counselor Sale.
TJ, just for clarification, there are no plans to use eminent domain to move anybody out of their house.
Our intent is for this to be a voluntary buyout program in the long term.
Thank you. And the second question is just going to follow up on Counselor Neitzert's. I'm a little unclear on the math, so I'm going to, $120,000 pre-flood value on a home, $40,000 worth of damage to this house, and they do not want to fix it up and they want to sell it to us. Would we pay the $120,000 or would we pay the $80,000 that the house is worth today?
It's going to be a case-by-case basis, but our hope is to remedy that through the appraisal process and assess that pre-flood. So like if you had a collapsed basement, we would be looking at as if that basement was still intact, for example.
So a homeowner in that location could have $40,000 worth of damage and still get $120,000 worth of value?
And that'll depend on the amount of money that they could potentially get from their flood insurance.
Let's assume no insurance.
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to be paying, and I'm for this. I believe in the long term, I'll get into it later, but I don't think it's appropriate use of taxpayer dollars to pay full value for a damaged property. Because if we don't do this, these people are going to have to spend that $40,000 to put their home back into shape that they could probably sell it. So I won't say it's the wrong place for the word, but it could be a windfall for somebody if they have a damaged piece of property and we're paying full value for that.
Yeah.
So I have very big concerns about that.
If I may. So the homes that are most deeply impacted that we've got the documentation on so far are in the floodplain. So that means that if they have a mortgage, they are required, as you know, to have flood insurance on their home. So right now, we don't have all the documentation, but we are working out the assumption that most of those homes have flood insurance of some sort.
Counselor Staley.
Well, first of all, of course, there's been a lot of dialogue about this in the media and on Facebook. And I want to personally commend the mayor and his staff for stepping up and addressing this issue. And I think you're doing it with compassion and responsiveness and generosity. That being said, I was contacted by an appraiser, and one of the, maybe this is just misinformation on the media's part, but there seemed to be the term assessed value thrown out. that will be used as the baseline for these people's home value. And so this appraiser contacted me and actually did a market analysis of several homes, and he was warning people that they need to get their own private appraisals done, to get that pre-flood valuation. But I'm hearing you say that that is going to be subsidized by any flood insurance payment that they're going to get. So they're made whole, right? That's going to be your goal?
Our goal, I can't say that we would make someone whole, because we cannot pay for, let's say, a damaged car from the flood or lost personal items. We would be paying for real property.
The structure, the home, right. But I'm assuming if you have flood insurance that it's going to give you some recompense for your house too.
Typically, I would defer to our insurance agent, but that typically goes towards the structure.
Damage to the home.
Damage of the home.
Yes, so you take that into consideration. I've got a question about that. The Lion House, what kind of damage was done to that on the park property?
That's one property we have not heard from yet, so I don't believe we've heard from that homeowner yet, so I can't answer that question at this time.
The historical house?
Correct.
And then are you looking at, has anybody investigated raising a house without a basement? I mean, how expensive, Councilor Neitzer was just talking about, you have to raise it, what did you say, Councilor, 2 feet?
2 feet above the flood base elevation.
Have some people in our community have done that with their homes? If they're in the flood, so what if they wanted to do that?
As a property owner, that's perfectly within their right. It's very expensive to do so, though. And with this voluntary buyout program, I think that would, if I was a homeowner, at least I would not look into doing that myself, as we're doing this program of buyouts. But that is certainly an option that someone.
But when they're doing that, I'm just logistically, if you're going to raise your house up, do you put another basement under it? Or is it just, I was even thinking, if somebody wanted to put some stilts or something, put their house up, move it up if they really like their house. And anyway, so if they can do that, right? They can still do that if they want to stay in their area.
They certainly could.
They're just going to have to soak up all the costs themselves.
Yeah,
We're not going to give them any kind of a grant or.
Correct.
Councilors, other questions? Councilor Starr?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. First, I want to go in a couple of different directions. One, I want to see a little more detail. I want to be able to see, where are the priority houses? How much is the priority? I think we've got a pretty good idea of what the assessed value is from the county as a starting point. I mean, to just pick a number and say, we hope this covers us, is lacking detail for me. So maybe by next week, it's something that we can say, okay, these are the priority properties, or this makes the most amount of sense. And given that, I guess, and I don't know, maybe TJ, you're the best, or Director Cotter, if we do some of these houses over time, will that improve the situation of flooding for the other homes in the area by creating some of the green space to start?
I appreciate it. I wish I had more details as well. If we're able to get in to assess some more of these properties before next week, we can certainly start to iron out some more of those details. But the last thing I want to do is promise 5 homeowners that we're going to buy them out in June, and then 3 more come along that are even in worse shape. So we really want to prioritize those homes.
Not to interrupt, but at some point, these people aren't living in their homes. So, I mean, that's why we're doing this in a rush situation. So if they come along later, they're probably going to be too late, aren't they?
We believe that the $1 million is sufficient at this time for the folks who have uninhabitable homes. Through the conversations we had of folks who came forward to us in March and recently, we have not heard from all of them, but the area that was most deeply impacted in that northwest corner, we've heard from almost all of those homeowners already, and that is the area that was most deeply impacted.
So we kind of have that list already, kind of a working list that we're going from?
We have a pretty good pulse on it. I just can't confirm that data at this point, so I apologize.
So I guess the follow-up was, by doing partial, will that make the situation better?
Mark might have a better, I'll let the engineer answer that type of question.
I'm barely smart enough to ask the engineer, so thank you for being here, Director.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. I would tell you that it's going to take a substantial number of homes to be raised before you'd see any measurable difference. This is a large floodplain, and we're looking at the size of those lots. And I think that's why, you know, TJ and our team really wants you to understand the concept, but this is going to take us some time. You know, one of our first steps would be to actually go out there and survey those houses so we can truly understand, you know, the first ones that are highest impacted. I think you heard from some of those homeowners tonight. But the next thing we want to, is part of that prioritization, is which ones are at or below the base flood elevation. And then once we start to kind of tier from tier 1 maybe through tier 3 on where those priority properties are, then we'll start to work directly with them and organize the appraisals. And so as much as we'd want, I think, have more details for you within a week, I think that's pretty aggressive, because we got you know, a lot of discussions to have with these respective property owners before we can have that level of detail. But the goal is a very similar but different. What we did with Koval is we did a voluntary buyout program there and did it on their time, and it's been a very successful approach for that neighborhood, happening over time. As TJ said, this will happen over time as well.
So if I can follow up one more time. So how quickly then, I get where you're going, Director. I mean, that makes sense. So we're rushing to appropriate the money, but we're probably not going to be able to appropriate the money or close on houses for, I mean, what would be the expectation? I mean, we're probably looking August, September before we can.
I think we can do better than probably August, September timeframe, but one of the keys to actually having the dollars is so we can hire the surveyors, hire the appraisers, and actually have the authority. If we reach an agreement with, let's just say there's 3 very impacted properties. We want to be able to, based on a third-party appraisal, if both parties agree, we want to be able to sign that purchase agreement, and then ultimately that'll come back in your consent agenda. So you will have involvement through this entire process, but we need authority to actually engage the professionals to help us with this process.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Other questions for Mark or TJ or Councilor Kiley?
Thank you. I know that we've had discussion that the majority of the homes that have been damaged the most likely have flood insurance. Do we have any idea of how many in the area do not have flood insurance because they don't have a mortgage? I know that I have spoken with one individual. I won't name names tonight, but
I do not. I've heard anecdotally that there's 1 or 2, but I don't have any data to answer that. I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, I'm going to state that I am in favor of this, and thankful that the administration has brought it forward. I think, number one, what I'm hearing is these individuals want some direction. They want to know, do I have to go in and make repairs to my homes now so I can get back in and I can see my family on a daily basis again? That's what's important about this meeting tonight and calling the special meeting next week as well, too. And I'm glad that Director Cotter mentioned the Colville Avenue area in the 33rd and Colville Avenue, a little bit north of that particular intersection. That it's similar. That was a similar program to what we are doing here today. And I know that we can point to the trap bag system. You know, I'll point out right now that the trap bag system was fortunately untested in this situation. We didn't have the water continue to rise to the extent that we feared it was going to. But at best, you'd be putting it in, tearing it down, putting it in, and tearing it down. And the levee system, as I had asked you previously, that's not something that the city can just authorize. That requires FEMA participation, and we're years down the road. So I don't think it gives these individuals sitting here tonight the information that they need. So I'm in favor of this, and thank you very much.
Counselor Neitzer.
I may have a question, but I do want to point out, probably for the benefit of the audience, because we're always throwing terms around, throwing around base flood elevation and BFE. So Albert is sitting there, and he could correct me. But as I recall, the base flood elevation is a level that the water is expected to rise in the 1% chance flood, or what's also known as a 100-year flood. So like, for example, it would be, let's say in my neighborhood, it might be, my BFE might be 1,450 feet above sea level. And so if my house is at 1444, I got a problem, because I'm 6 feet below where the water is expected to rise in the 1% flood, which we're finding we're getting a lot of 1% floods these days.
Correct. The 1% chance is based on like the past 60 years of historical data, and given that time period and those events you've seen, 1% of the chance, so you're expecting on an annual basis to get to that point. So every day that resets.
And these homes in the A zone, which is a special flood hazard area, if they were at over 50% injured or destroyed,
they get to a point where where they need to be substantially improved for any event. I just want to stress that floods, tornadoes, fires, anything, they need to be brought into our standard, which says the base flood elevation, the BFE, your minimum floor of your first habitable spot is 2 feet above that. So you can do a foundation 2 feet above, you can do a garage below, then your living space above. There's 3 houses in this area that are like that were built to that standard.
sure. So if you're 4 feet below BFE, you're gonna have to raise it 6 feet, because you need 2 foot of what they call freeboard, which is to give a little margin of error. So if the water rises an inch above BFE, it still doesn't flood.
Correct. Yeah, the city of Sioux Falls, we adopted 2 foot freeboard to cover that and give those homeowners that assistance. It also helps out when you go to the insurance side, because the higher you are above BFE, if the bank is going to require you to cover flood insurance, the cheaper that insurance is going to be.
If this was indicated, do we have any idea for all of these homes, how many of them that we have any idea what survey of what elevation they're at, or do we know for almost none of them?
We don't have an exact one. My rough off-the-cuff guess is, again, there's 3 houses out there that are there. You're probably looking near the area of 4.5 feet off the ground, but.
Okay, thanks.
We'll get you a job application after this, Counselor Neitzer.
Floodplain administrator.
Counselors, do you have other questions for staff? Counselor Starr.
Do, probably for Mr. Nelson again, if we could. I kind of wanted to go, I went the one direction with what we're doing plan-wise. Normally when we're in the middle of a budget year, or when we're going through the budget process, the council looks to make cuts for these kind of things. Not saying we don't have the money, we won't find the money. Did you, when you were considering this plan, look for cuts or things in the CIP that we could push forward rather than taking this from reserves?
We are working through the budget process to find those dollars at this time for future years.
But for this current year, when we're making changes to a year where we're already in place, did you look at making cuts or changes and reprioritize the current budget authority that you have?
In place of the surplus dollars? We did not.
Okay.
We looked at surplus dollars because they fall into the CIP category.
Might be one place where I look over the next week doing that, is that maybe there are some places where we can move capital programs out a year or reprioritize, because I think that's what we've become really good as the council, is making sure that we're not taking money out of savings to do these kind of projects mid-year when we don't have a chance to plan for them. And there was no way to plan for this, and I understand that. So I may have an amendment to do that, or find those places where we could find some existing cuts to move forward next week. So,
Councilor Kiley.
And you may be able to answer this question as well too, but refresh my memory, is our surplus dollars currently at 31% right now versus?
Our surplus dollars?
Yes, 31%, 6% over our 25% threshold that we want to set.
You're talking about reserves?
Yes, our reserves rather, sorry.
I believe that is, I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but I believe it's in that 31% range.
Okay, thank you. And then just going back a little bit, I think we were talking about moving the homes, will it help by just vacating and making more pervious property? I would question that in this case, because a month ago, the issue was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Cotter, the ground was frozen, so we didn't have, all we had was just water running across the surface. There wasn't any absorption in that case. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Erickson.
I just want to make it very, very clear. We're talking about second penny. There is not a surplus reserve for second penny. We're talking about using second penny funds. So we're not dipping into our reserves. No. We're using the money from 2018 that's being carried over for 2019. So these are actual legitimate second penny surplus funds. It's very different than first penny and the 25% reserve and cutting other areas. This is every year the administration comes forward and says we have approximately fill in the blank, $5-6 million. Where do you want to spend that, council? Do we want to do more roads? Do we want to do adaptive traffic signals? Do we want to help this neighborhood? Where do we want to go? And we generally get, for ease, we get a menu, so to speak, and we go back and forth through informationals with the administration. All we're doing is taking this item saying, this is that important. This is so important, we need to put this at the top of our list. We'll get to the rest of the surplus for that second penny, and we'll talk about roads, whatever those priorities are. But today, we need to give certainty to this neighborhood what we're going to do. Do they fix it up? Do they not? What are we going to do? And so this is just that first step, using the surplus funds from 2018. TJ and Director also mentioned going forward, they are going to be proposing putting in additional funding in that second penny for future buyouts. But right now, this is using the surplus funds. I just want that to be very, very clear.
Counselor Neitzer?
And Counselor Erickson did a good job, but I think it's worth reiterating that we budgeted really conservatively in last year's budget for sales tax growth, and it grew quite a bit more than what we had expected, and we had some savings in some bid lettings. And so between that, I think it was maybe 5.3 million, I want to say, maybe something like that. A little less than that maybe, but $4 or $5 million perhaps in capital surplus. So in plain English, nothing has to be cut from what we plan to do in the capital plan this year. No roads will be cut, nothing will have to be cut. We just have that extra money that we were going to have the discussion anyway about what do we spend it on. And all we're talking about here is basically bumping this to the top of the list of items that we could use those extra funds for. So just so people know, nothing is being cut. We're not cutting any roads.
Correct. And if I may, at next week's informational, Finance Director Pritchett will be presenting the rest of those proposed surplus allocations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff, or can we put a motion on the floor?
I move to approve the resolution to set a second date on 23rd.
All right, motion by Counselor Sale to set a date of second reading for the special meeting that we've called for April 23rd, and that's seconded by Counselor Kiley seconded that. Discussion amongst the councilor. Council Sale.
Just a couple of things I'd like to point out. In what we do up here, there are important things to do and there are urgent things to do. I think the urgent thing to do is to allocate this money so we can get it to the important things, is how do we spend it and how do we protect this neighborhood. The citizens of Sioux Falls should know that the city actually owns a lot of properties around Sioux Falls that have fallen into this category throughout the years. It was mentioned down at 33rd and Colville. That's my area. It's happened a lot. And it's a thing to do for the neighbors. National Flood Insurance runs a deficit of $1.5 billion a year because people continuously build in floodplains and they aren't regulated by local jurisdictions. It is $27 billion in the red. So if we don't stand up as a community and say, we're going to take care of it ourselves, and we'll let Florida deal with what they do, it's good government for us to do this. My last thing that I will point out, I don't believe that the city of Sioux Falls can pay more than appraised value for a property. So if you have a damaged car you want to sell me, I pay the damaged value. The same thing with a home. If the home is damaged and it's only worth a percentage of what the true value undamaged was, I don't believe legally we can pay more than the appraised value. So if people think that they're going to get a windfall because of what we're doing tonight, I don't think that's gonna happen. But I do wanna say that we need to get some help to these people. They need some direction in their life. And I hope that next week we can go, I hope tonight we approve it, and I hope the next week we do too.
Thanks, Counselor. Other discussion, Council, on this item? All right, I'm going to call for a vote then.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg? Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Okay, that passes 8-0. Item 50.
Item 50, a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota approving the placement of a sculpture on public property.
Good evening, Shauna.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm Shauna Goldammer with Planning and Development Services. Here tonight, we're to talk about Bear Lee Standing and its new home that's going to be out at Great Bear. Bear Lee Standing was our 2018 Sculpture Walk People's Choice, and it was formerly at 11th and Phillips, and it's found a new home, as I indicated, at Great Bear Ski Valley. The new location has been approved both by Visual Arts Commission and the Park Board. And with that, I would answer any questions, but this is the location out at Great Bear. And with that, I look for you to support Bear Lee Standing out at Great Bear.
Thank you, Shauna. Great sculpture. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? Councilors, do you have any questions for Shauna on this? All right, I'd look for a motion, please.
Second, Brecky.
Move to approve Kylie, seconded by Brecky. Any discussion? A vote, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Item 51.
Item 51, a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls approving diagonal parking on North Sherman Avenue.
No one wanted to stay for your parking stuff, Heath. Don't take it personally.
I'm staying, Heath.
Welcome, Heath.
Heath, evening council. Heath Hofteser, principal traffic engineer for the city of Sioux Falls. What we have before us is a resolution to approve diagonal parking on the east side of Sherman Avenue between Austin Street and 8th Street. It's Stockwell Engineering applied for this on the behalf of the St. Francis House. We're unaware of anybody that's opposed in the neighborhood, and we recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Heath. Anyone from the public here to speak on this item? Councilors, do you have questions for, oh, good evening. Hi, sorry. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Julie Becker, Director of the St. Francis House. Before I go into the parking, I just have to tell you guys how awesome our city police and fire department is. As I told you when I presented, they came through and did their training through the homes before we demoed them down. And I've never seen so many people be so grateful and so respectful for the opportunity to use those homes for training. It was pretty amazing and loud at times to watch. So just wanted to share that. We are putting this diagonal parking in, which actually will be over and above the parking that we need, as I explained when we were here before. This has really been a request from our neighbors. With the parking with Our Lady of Guadalupe, they're expanding Hispanic ministry, and the neighbors being impacted by the church parking on those side streets. So if we can put this diagonal parking in, it will benefit the St. Francis House, but morally it'll help our neighbors to the west, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then our neighbors will have less traffic in front of their homes.
Great, thanks, Julie.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? All right, councilors, do you have any questions on this item? Councilor Neitzert.
First of all, I think it'll probably have a traffic calming effect, which is a good thing. Could somebody answer this for me? Does anybody know what the required on or off-street parking is, and is that being provided, or are they being allowed to do it in lieu of that on-street?
And maybe someone else can answer this, but from what I understand, they meet all of their off-street parking requirements, and that this just provides access for the site.
For the what?
It just provides access parking. They currently, without it, they meet all their off-street parking requirements.
Could we let her follow up?
So what we've done is on this drawing, if you look just It would be, let me get my directions, east of this wing here. We purchased another house, which is behind our multifamily housing unit for those that came and toured that apartment complex. We purchased that to additional parking for our volunteers, our staff, and our guests. So the parking up front is really in addition, and then we'll have the side parking that we will be able to do on 8th Street as well as Austin, where right now is our current front door. So we're over and above what we need.
Okay, thank you, very good.
Other questions on this? Counselor Kiley?
It's really a statement. I'd just like to say that, Heath, you're doing a good job of observing the mayor's directive to dress for the occasion. You look good in a sport coat this evening.
Flattery will get him nowhere.
I
will it?
move approval of this item.
Second.
All right, motion approved by Counselor Kiley and seconded by Counselor Sale. Further discussion amongst the council? All right, let's vote on this, please.
Council members Erickson?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Daley?
Yes.
Recky?
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Counselors, any new business?
Move to adjourn, Star.
Second?
All right, motion adjourned by Starr and seconded by Kiley. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. That's carried. The motion is adjourned. The meeting is adjourned. Yeah, and the motion.